Hi, today I will talk about sexual education in Eastern European countries, specifically Ukraine, Russia and Belarus. In the USSR, the process of human reproduction was explained using rabbits, and the number of abortions was counted in millions per year. With the decline of old ideology, everything was supposed to change. However, in Russia, Ukraine and Belarus, unfortunately, discussing sexual education for children is not only discouraged, but also potentially dangerous. In general, it can be said that we don't have sexual education at all. During the Soviet era, sex wasn't talked about, and it was considered indecent. Unfortunately, this mindset has persisted into the present days, making it a taboo topic. As a result, children are shielded as much as possible from it, and consequently, there are no education on this subject. Even if it were taught in schools, many parents would be highly dissatisfied and would withdraw their children from such classes. Of course, now there is the internet, and children often seek information on this topic there because they cannot ask their parents due to fear of judgment. But as you can imagine, misinformation can be acquired due to lack of knowledge, at least. And even when they ask their parents where do children come from, they receive answers like "the stork brought you" or "we found you in a cabbage", which is obviously nonsense and often just a subject for jokes. However, there are real stories where parents tell their children such things. Interestingly, if you Google sexual education in Russia, Google will tell you that currently there is no sexual education in Russia. In general, sexual education in Russia, Ukraine and Belarus focuses more on reproductive biology and anatomy, rather than providing comprehensive information about relationships, consent, and safe sexual practices. Discussions on topics such as contraception or sexually transmitted infections are limited or completely excluded. I think that there are more people in our countries with various sexual deviations. In the midst of this silence, you don't understand what is normal and what is not, and you have no one to discuss it with. Your brain, especially in adolescence, can come up with things that will stay with you forever. This includes numerous couples that don't know or don't understand why they should use contraception, resulting in a relatively high number of infections in society and unwanted teenage pregnancies. The LGBTQ+ community is a separate topic. In Russia, for example, it is currently prohibited at the state level to talk or discuss anything related to LGBTQ+ issues, as any topic related to LGBTQ+ is considered propaganda and is punishable by law. Not to mention the people who belong to this community. They have to hide and cannot show their relationships openly, because they will not only receive a lot of hatred from other people, but also, due to the new laws, they can end up in prison. Can you imagine how teenagers who believe they are abnormal feel because they were taught so by their parents and society? I know that now some organizations are trying to develop and introduce sexual education in schools. However, there is a lack of standardized and age-appropriate materials for it. Even if there is sexual education in the school, it is usually given by ordinary teachers. And I know that teachers feel unprepared and unsure to discuss this topic, which leads to inconsistent and insufficient information provided to students. What's the point of saying that teachers cannot discuss it with children if adults, even with their partners, cannot talk about sex? Because they are embarrassed and afraid of judgment even from the closest person. To summarize, the absence of open discussion about sex in Russia, Ukraine and Belarus can be attributed to several factors. Firstly, the influence of traditional values, and conservative public opinion plays a significant role. Блять, что за пиздец? Our countries have long history of strong regulations and family values, which can create an atmosphere of inhibition and taboo when it comes to discussing sexuality. Secondly, sexual education in our countries is still considered as a sensitive topic, and some people fear that open discussions about sex may lead to undesirable consequences, such as early sexual activity or a violation of traditional norms.
This resistance or restraint in discussion and the implementation of more comprehensive sexual education in educational programs.
The third factor is related to the culture of silence and stigmatization surrounding sexuality. Society tends to be secretive and unaccepting of open conversation about sex and sexuality. This leads to a lack of accessible and accurate information about sex, which in turn can affect the health and safety of young people. In general, people from all sides advocate for preserving certain traditional values, while teenagers are unaware of how and why to use condoms, and that non-traditional sexual orientations have long been the norm in more developed part of the world. That's all for today. Thank you for watching and have a good day.